You're all set to begin. Go ahead.
Thank you. All righty, welcome people. I'd like to call the meeting of Tuesday, June 17th, 2025 to order, acting under the provisions of the Code of the Town of Barnstable, Section 112-1 through 112-7. The Historical Commission will hold a public hearing on the following applications. The following applications have been determined significant and were referred for a public hearing. This meeting of the Barnstable Historical Commission is being recorded and broadcast on the Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the chair must inquire whether anyone else is recording this meeting, and if so, to please make their presence known. I don't see anybody looking like they're videoing this. That's great. We ask that during the afternoon's proceedings, cell phones be turned off and conversations other than those before the commission take place outside the room. When an application is called, please come to the table and sign here on the sign-in sheet. All interested parties or butters should also come forward at that time, and all those wishing to speak regarding an application should also please sign in. Our first order of business is a roll call of attendance. Nancy Shoemaker.
Here.
Cheryl Powell is not here. Jack Kay.
Here.
Barbara DeGassi.
I'm here.
John Richmond.
Here.
Andrew Fisher.
Here.
Robert Frazee. Here. Awesome. Well, we have one major item, one hearing on the agenda. We might as well go straight to that. Francis and Doris Ahern, if I pronounced that all right. 555 Main Street, Katuitt, map 21, parcel 007, built 1900. Partial demolition, pick up house and relocate it on a new foundation. Remove the gable roof and restore it with a typical four-sided mansard. Remove recent additions, shorten the porch, and add a modest addition to the right side. New roofing, windows, siding, and trim. Thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate that. And I want to explain to you and to the others, one of the reasons that I did want to hold a hearing was I realized the building is not listed, but it is inventoried, and it is a significant building in a number of ways. You guys are doing some pretty interesting things with it, so I felt it was appropriate for a larger group of us than just me alone to.
That's good.
Yeah, that's our only hearing, so probably that's fine. Thank you very much. Before we get started, can I just ask for a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Yes, dive in, sir.
Okay, Timothy Luff. I have an architectural firm in Katuitt. We have done many projects with you. A lot of historical projects in town and also in other towns. And so we are the authors of the design of this project. We have been involved in this project for about a year. And once the clients decided to purchase the project, we met on site and looked at the project. Erica sent me this, which was very nice. So we were able to get a little bit of history. Mr. Gould and I have done many projects together.
He's a good friend.
And
He's a friend of all historic people.
And he is a wonderful resource.
Yeah.
So I've been in practice for almost 30 years, and I've known him about 25. And all the projects that in Katuitt that I've done have been with Mr. Gould. That he has documented. So awesome resource. So basically, we have your typical mansard kind of vernacular that is very prominent in Katuitt. Yeah. You'll find that there are two styles that are above and beyond the rest of the styles in Katuitt. One is Greek Revival, the other is the mansard. And so this is a typical mansard expression. But we've also seen some, and I'm going to be, I'll be guarded on what I say in terms of how I perceive these additions.
The ones that are there now, you mean? Yeah.
They are not nice.
No, you don't
okay.
Have to be
So, they're probably 4 or 5 that we can see that we think are additions, but what we have documented, we don't know. Okay, so there was a nasty addition that was done above the porch that was horrible. There's another one that was done on the left side of the front of the house that is a gable that betrayed the mansard vernacular. There's an addition in the back, and then also an extension of the porch. So we don't know when these additions happen, but all I can tell you is that they're not compatible with the original architecture. If we knew who the architect was, we don't. but we can say that they're not particularly handsome. We had the honor of being involved in a project about a year ago, probably 3 years ago on High Street, near the fire station. Another very good example of a mansard, but with some of these additions. I'll pass this around to the staff because I'd like them to see the before and after, which again, we are very proud of. This was a very similar example to what we have today where they got off track. Somebody decided to add on and they didn't respect the architecture was there. We brought that back. And this particular house came out amazing. Or, we had an addition to it, but I don't know if you recall that, Nancy, you were definitely on the board but definitely you were there when I presented.
I own a mansard roof.
Okay, but you were there when we presented that. So I only show the board this because it's a similar example of what we're trying to do here. Where we're trying to undo some bad architecture, bring back the good. So our plan here is this house has been abandoned, I don't know for how many years, but it's nobody's touched it, nobody's done anything with it for a number of years. The homeowner got zealous and started doing some demo and got his wrist slapped by the town to say, stop, you don't have permission to do the demo. It was interior, it wasn't anything that the committee would be concerned about. But our intention is to do this. Number one, pick it up and relocate it. I think we have a site plan there. Yeah. Okay. So you can see here, this is the existing current location of the structure. Very large lot, very different for Katuitt, like almost 3 acres, which is unheard of in downtown Katuitt. So our intentions are to pick this up and pivot it and locate it over here. And we're gonna, because right now it doesn't have, typical old structure on, cedar stumps, basically. So we're gonna pick it up, we're gonna relocate it over here, we're gonna drop it down on a new foundation. We're gonna get rid of, this is where that horrible gable is.
Oh, just be careful about touching the screen.
Yep. So this is where that gable is, that was an addition. This is where that second story dormer that was done. Right. So basically those are the areas where we're really concentrating on redirecting our architectural efforts. In order to get the floor plan to work for modern living, we need to extend this, which would be here. We need to extend this out like 5 feet. I think we extended it out to get the floor plan to work. So other than that, that's really the basic scope of what we're doing. The remodeling will be extensive. We'll be stripping the building down to its bare studs. We will be introducing brand new windows that will be Pelham or Marvin, so there'll be a true divided light, really technically a simulated divided light, but they will emulate what was there without the storm windows. New siding, and this particular client is also investing in a wood cedar roof. So we are trying to revive what is here today to something that we feel is going to give honor to what's there, but also modernize it to a floor plan that is open, which is what the general people want today. So that's kind of the scope of work in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
We're just looking at that picture.
Go back.
Either one. You can see what the existing dwelling and how it's going to turn, but you still have a bump out from the front of the house over here, and the proposed one. Is there going to be a mansard roof all the way back, and there?
I think you're referring to this piece here.
That, and then where the porch is on your proposed, I'm wondering about that wall. Yes, right there.
I think you have elevations.
Is that all going to
Yeah,
be?
we do. So we're severing.
Here, I'm
Okay.
gonna come down to the elevations for you.
Sure.
Back up one, and then
Well, it's nice that we have before and after,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yep.
That's existing.
This is
Okay,
existing,
yeah,
this is.
so this piece is being severed off. Okay, so that we can go back to a true mansard, a mansard roof, yeah. And then a corresponding mansard, you know, because you can see the symmetry that here is being introduced. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can see clearly from this front elevation that they deviated from what would have been a very nice house. Maybe what the first initial house was more in keeping with the, you know, with the guidelines of the vernacular of the time, but this addition and this addition clearly started to deviate from what would have been good traditional.
It probably was from the front door to our right as an original house of a one door and two windows to the side, you know.
Could very much have been that this piece here was added.
Yeah.
You know, we have some data that would suggest some dates that this was added, but we have nothing. Mr. Gould could not document exactly when that happened.
Right.
We don't know.
He and I used to crawl around in cellars.
Yeah.
In fact, he used to document and I used to crawl, is how we
Okay,
used to put it
all right.
more accurate.
Yeah,
It's
his
probably
path,
for that reason, because that's sometimes the only way you can tell what's going
yeah,
on.
his passion was amazing.
It was contagious,
Yeah.
it's great.
I did a book with
So
him. You did
these
it.
two chimneys here are being eliminated. They're strictly for, sorry, touch on the screen again. These are strictly functional as ways to exhaust gases from the furnace, right? So they were not, you know, part of an original chimney. So those are gone, but a new one is being introduced here, which will be a functional chimney. So just again, full disclosure of what we're tearing down and what we're acting to rebuild.
Appreciate it. My impression was, in looking at this in person and Google mapping it, you know, street view kind of stuff, that it's not immensely eye-poppingly visible from the street
No.
for a house of this size, which is unusual.
Mhm.
And you're moving it further away from the street, so, I mean, the fact that it, I think, looks rather nice, it is helped by the fact that, you know, nobody's gonna be eyeballing it at a very close range.
No, it's true.
anyway.
It's this property.
It is an odd lot, as
It
you
is an
pointed
odd
out to
lot,
start
and this
with.
property is one that, I mean, I've lived in Katuitt for 30 years, but it's one of these properties where you just drive by. You
Yeah,
don't, if you're
that's what was
walking,
my
you might
impression.
notice it, but otherwise it's like, I don't even know it's there.
Mhm.
And so, you know, its location on the lot, the fact that it's turned sideways just makes it very de minimis in terms of its visual streetscape, whether it be pedestrian or vehicular.
Yeah.
And we would like to change that, because we would like to now return it. Yes, it's farther away, but we would like to now say, look at me. This is an attractive addition to Katuitt, you know, so that's kind of our thought process. And we're fortunate enough to have a client that is willing to, you know, put the right windows in and the siding and the roofing to be something that is truly historical.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? My own feeling is you pushed all the right buttons in your presentation for me.
Again, I'm
The
excited about
context
it.
is what it's about.
I'm
You
excited
obviously
about
got
it. I'm invested in the town. This is where my practice is, and I've been doing a lot of historical houses. So, yeah, I'm invested. Yeah.
Do you really think the date of the house is 1900? That's a little late for mansard.
No. Actually, that was before I got this. Erica sent this to me after I put the application in. So, according to this document, 1877.
Yeah, that's,
That
mine's
sounds more like it.
1870.
Yeah,
That sounds.
but I didn't have that, I only could go by the assessor's data, prior to that.
Right.
So I didn't really
This is
know.
a common foible in many towns where assessors' records don't match the actual date of a building. And it's
100%.
partly because they've been accumulating changes and they track the
Yeah.
dates of the changes more than the origin. And
Correct, and if we
it's an
didn't have a guy like
understandable
Mr.
thing.
Gould, we'd
That's
be in the
right.
dark.
That's
I mean,
true.
he spent a lot of time doing this,
Well, as a
stuff.
commission, we've, later today, we're
For our
going to approve
benefit,
another
or for
10
the
of
town's
those.
benefit, I should say, more importantly, so,
You know
yeah,
that
I
A.
did.
Lawrence Lowell, who was the longest longest term of being president of Harvard, lived there in the summer.
Okay,
And he built a mansard roof house, and that's why then all these people from all over
Became
the world, not
contagious.
just United States came and copied, so that, how many are there? 26 or
Oh, I
something
don't
like
know.
that?
There are
Those
quite a few.
There are quite a few.
And it's always the case, for instance, this one, if you looked at it quickly, you wouldn't see so much of the mansard because of the way it's oriented and the
Yeah.
additions that were put on
And
it.
so much of
Some of
it-
them, there are more probably than people realize, just for that kind
No,
of
there
reason.
are, and
That would
when,
surprise
you
me.
know, over the years, I've just driven through, not necessarily documented with paper, just the number of, you know, when clients have asked me to, you know, think about the potential design for a new construction, I'm like, here are the two vernaculars that I see the most. And it's Greek Revival and the mansard. And, you know, to be honest with you, I think the mansard is an acquired taste. I don't think everybody
agree.
loves it. You know what I mean?
I do wanna
It gives you
think
great, it gives you great space on the second floor,
It does.
but
To a point we receive comments on frequently here at this historical commission is an effort to increase functional volume on a second floor or attic floor.
I would
I
agree.
was gonna thank you for not bringing us more gambrels and for doing something with what you already had to work with, which is a
But I
nice
would
and
tell you
refreshing
that
change.
there was a point in my practice where I couldn't give a gambrel away.
Isn't that funny?
And now, it seems to be hot, you know, the shingle style, the gambrel style, you know, it's a cyclical thing where people go through different styles. We can look at 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and we could define architecture that was popular each decade,
In
but
every era.
may not be good architecture, but it was popular at
Yeah,
the
good or
time.
bad, they
Yeah.
get popular and they get remembered
But
for
this
it.
is definitely a staple of couture.
Yeah,
There's no
you know,
question.
I get, Katuitt's known for it.
Does the existing building have wooden gutters?
That's an interesting question. A lot of mansard roof buildings
It's good.
did
Can we
have,
pull up the photos?
or had internal gutters as well as.
No, it does not. Oh, this does here.
Yeah, it
But
does.
it's a mix. I think some of it is wood and some of it is aluminum. You know,
Right.
that makes
Back it
sense.
down,
Because
too.
I think in the 80s or 90s, there was an addition. So, yeah.
But there were many mansard roof buildings, not necessarily those.
That's
to it,
definitely
where,
aluminum
where
right
that
there.
was, the mansard roof came down and covered the space
Yeah.
that was essentially the drain.
Yep.
And they didn't have visible downspouts very often.
What I
Everything was on the
proposed for
outside.
this project, to answer your question, is the gutters will be fiberglass, but the exact profile of the wood.
Oh, good
So
for
once it's painted, you'll never know.
Great.
So
Very good.
we're gonna put a fiberglass gutter to that profile right there. And we won't be doing this nasty downspout,
Thank you.
just so you know.
That's exactly what got me started.
Not
on-
gonna
on the
happen.
No
No,
downspouts
it's
comment.
gonna be a round, could be round white or copper, but it won't be that corrugated.
The scallop profile of some
Yeah.
of the courses of shingles is one of the nice reasons I enjoyed hearing.
And
you talk
I'm
about
not sure we're
quality.
doing that, duplicating
okay,
that,
but it's
but, you know, it will be wood. You know, over time, they changed it, so that's asphalt
Yeah,
up here.
top.
And a lot of times they did that where they put wood here and then asphalt there, which I hate because this is technically roof, so is that. And some people view this as sidewall, it's not sidewall, it's roof, so. But we will, both this plane and that plane will be asphalt. I mean,
Would be wood. Yeah.
red cedar, yeah.
Great.
No, when I've seen most of the mansard roofs that I have seen, roofed houses, they have the gutters on the corners. You,
Corners.
Oh, if they bring a downspout down, you mean?
yeah,
You don't mean
yeah,
gutter, you
I
mean
don't, I mean
downspout.
the
Yeah,
downspout.
they can bring them down on the exterior at the corners, but sometimes.
Oh, yeah, I see, as opposed to this in the
Yeah.
center, yeah, no, that's abnormal.
If you can.
But
It's
there were
abnormal.
also many of them built in an era when there was no public water, and one of the objectives was to gather rainwater and keep it internally in a cistern or pump it up to an attic level and use gravity feed water in the house.
But as we see in this picture, that is not typical.
Right.
It would typically be on the corners, yes.
Cool. Any other questions, comments for these folks? If you'd like, I'd be happy to go straight to motions and, we need to close the hearing, I'm sorry. Can I have a motion to do that, please?
I move that we close the hearing.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, hearing's closed, and somebody like to volunteer to read the motions?
Sure.
We'll do that, Barbara, thank you. It's not gonna be a long deal of it today.
Barbara's been quiet.
She is very quiet, she's great. Thank you.
This is the motion for Hearn Francis indoors at 555 Main Street in Katuitt, map 021, parcel 007, built 1900 or 1877.
Yeah.
We're amending that.
Yeah.
Partial demolition, pick up house and relocate it onto a new foundation, remove the gable roof and restore it with a typical four-sided mansard. Remove recent additions, shorten the porch, and add a modest addition to the right side. New roofing, windows, siding, and trim. Motion one.
Have a second for that?
She hasn't read it in the motion
We
yet.
Oh, I beg
Yeah.
you. I'm getting ahead of,
Yeah.
your pause made me
Yeah.
jump. Excuse me, go for it.
I move that after review and consideration of public testimony, the application and associated materials, the significant building 555 Main Street, Katuitt, is a preferably preserved significant building.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jack. All righty. An aye vote will impose an 18-month delay. A nay vote will not impose an 18-month delay. Nancy?
Nay.
Barbara?
Nay.
John?
Nay.
Jack?
Nay.
Andrew?
Nay.
Robert? Nay. Great.
If motion one fails with a nay vote, I move that in accordance with section 112-3F, the Barnstable Historical Commission determines that the partial demolition of the building located 555 Main Street, Katuitt is not detrimental to the historical, cultural, and architectural heritage or resources of the town.
Second that.
Thank you, Jack. An aye vote determines that the partial demolition of the single-family structure is not detrimental and no demolition delay will be imposed. Nancy?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Robert? Aye. We're good.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thank
your
you for
presentation. That was
carrying
really
it.
helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah, and thank you for,
can't take it out of the blood.
No, well-
I'm invested at this point.
it was nice to have somebody who would understand why you were asked in also, which is exactly right. So thank you very
Happy,
much.
can't wait to see it. Bill.
Well, look
Yeah,
forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I wonder if we could jump around our agenda just a little bit and go straight to the proposed Senate bill. Because, Nancy, you had said you might need to leave early, and I want to be sure that we have as many
I
people.
actually have a
as we
5
can.
o'clock meeting and I told them I'd be late, but
Okay, well,
whatever. Yeah.
we're doing pretty well,
yeah,
actually.
we are.
I want to say that I did read through the proposed amendment fairly quickly. I'm not good at reading things like that personally, I never have been. I found it sort of a mixed bag of things that almost ask for or require more than most historical commissions would ever dream of when it comes to demolition delay and punitive penalties and things of that nature, but then there are some things inherent in it that are potentially problematic. One of them is that it does mention the use of solar as an energy source, but it's not, to my way of thinking, terribly clear about what it means to enable by doing so. I would have to read it more closely, but I'm a little wary, having watched the Old Kings Highway get challenged in the last couple of years about solar and almost undid the Old Kings Highway Act. So it's just one thing I kind of caution flagged as I read it. And the other, in speaking with Erica on the phone earlier today, I came to realize that this amendment will stand instead of our current Chapter 40C.
It's replacing it.
And in doing so, potentially, arguably, eliminates some of the authority and detail that a local historic district commission has, as opposed to a historical commission like ours has. Getting back to a point, ironically, that we were discussing at our last meeting, which is on Hyannisport's behalf, whether a local historic district commission is appropriate over there. And we haven't got very far with that, of course, but that's all right. I'm just using it as kind of an example. It matters in this context. I also, in talking with Erica, understand that she spoke with Corey, who wasn't able to be here today, but he is on a mailing list that is very helpful for finding other opinions about this. I think, am I saying this correctly, Erica? Feel free to chime in if you want on your own, but I'm trying to get to a point of his advice of how we might
Yeah,
handle
he's part of the
this
Mass
today.
Historic Preservation nonprofit,
Right,
so a couple of people had chimed in. Sorry, excuse me. About the bill, and the basics of it was the concern for the local historic districts.
yeah, that's the primary one. Noted in the communique that alerted the town from Mr. Steinitz at MHC is that MHC was not consulted in the creation of this proposed new legislation, which is worrisome to me personally, because you would think if someone had historic preservation uppermost in their minds, they would at the very least have consulted the State Historical Commission on the subject and get their opinion or their input or their participation. And if what he said is true, that's another flag for me. It's a political matter in many ways, even though it's germane as a topic to us as a commission. I'm inclined to think, and I think Corey advised this as well, I'm not trying to speak out of turn for him, but that rather than as a commission taking a unified position on this thing, we use the time we have, which is rather short, I think it's only about another week, to comment if we individually feel motivated to do so on matters of it that we either support or about which we are concerned, rather than laying our hands firmly on the electrified third rail of Massachusetts state politics as a town historical commission. I just don't feel that would be hugely wise. And I would be happy for our liaison who's in the room, and I appreciate every minute you spend with us. If you feel like chiming in on this, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, I actually would like more information about it.
Sure.
But I think that you folks know what you're doing.
Well, thank you.
And I would really trust what you come up with.
Well, thank you, Charlie. I trust Corey also. I'm sorry he's not able to be here today, but he's very plugged into this kind of thing. And he, in his prior existence, was staff for the Falmouth Historical Commission, and they're comparable in size and scope and have many similar challenges to Barnstable. And I think his experience is pretty well honed for our use as well. And I know from what Erica told me, it was his feeling we ought to do this on an individual basis, and I'm fine with that. But
Yeah, Corey
I would
had
love to discuss
stated
it
that you
more.
could submit comment as a commission if you had wanted to, but that you may also do so individually. It is up to the commission.
Sure.
But he did say individually, writing comment to the written testimony as stipulated in the email to the joint municipalities committee, or to Senator Joe Comerford, who is sponsoring this bill.
Would it usually be more effective to write to the joint committee rather than to the sponsor? It's going to be a public record either way, but I'm not sure in which way it would be handled, with one receiving it versus the other.
Yeah,
Could go to
in the
both,
email,
honestly.
it commented asking for it to be sent to the joint committee.
That makes sense.
And then you could always CC.
Yeah, exactly. I was able to cover both, copy
Yep.
both. Okay.
Yep. So,
Does anyone feel that we should
Well, I don't
make comments as a
understand,
group?
I don't understand why things are being removed.
I'm not sure I
They
do
should
either.
Stay there.
One
What's
of
the
my-
advantage?
Well, it's a question of what's the advantage and to whom or for whom. And I don't really have an answer for that, but I have this little mantra running in the back of my head that keeps reminding me that we're living through a time of generational change. And we are, and century change as well, even though we're still in the first quarter of this one. It's just starting to gain some momentum, and we don't, any of us, really know what that's going to portend in the way of identifying things that do or don't still matter, do or don't still need to be protected, should be protected, and if so, for whom, and if so, why. I'm still wondering about all of that, because we've been working on the precepts that we grew up with, learned, and have operated under for all of our lives, which have to do with the National Register standards, the National Park Service, and things that are fairly broad, but also pretty specific. And, you know, it's not up to us to make those changes, but it's up to us to observe that some things of those may change and may need to change in order for things to stay relevant to people alive in the next 40, 50, 75 years. You know, I'm fond of saying if you build a new house or a new commercial structure, please God, try and make it done well enough that somebody 75 years from now, like us, would want to preserve it and fight for it. And it means you get a high quality result that everybody living through those 75 years gets to appreciate, use, and enjoy as well. Well, this is a comparable kind of time, I think, and I'm guessing that there is a constituency that doesn't love conventional preservation. And this is just purely a hunch on my part. And I don't know anything about the proponents. I don't know, you know, the politics of the background of it. What they're proposing is not, in my personal opinion, inherently less regulatory than what is on the books now, but it might remove some of the tools in the toolbox that are the more refined tools that are available for guarding the integrity, the aesthetics, the architectural elements within a historic district.
Mhm.
And that seems like a real shame to me. It's a little bit like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And I don't know if everybody's looking, and you know, I mean everybody globally, I don't mean just us, looking and paying enough attention to this to even raise that question in a meaningful way in the context of conversations at the State House. That's way above my pay grade personally. I have no clue.
Unfortunately, this came to our attention on Friday.
Yeah, it's kind of,
And it was kind of
like, oh my God.
Corey had emailed both me and Bob, and we decided to put it on the agenda. So that was the first time we were seeing it. It was introduced to the joint committee. The bill was introduced on June 10th. And they were asking for comment within about 2 weeks, so by June 24th.
So, you know, at arm's length, my impression is it's got some power behind it, or it wouldn't be proceeding on that rapid a timeline, but that may be naive of me. I just think that's correct. Whatever that means. Personally, one of my instincts is, as an individual, not as a chairman of this commission, I'm going to place a call to MHC. I want to find out what they really think about this, and are they going to comment on it? And if so, great, what are they going to say and when? And if not, why on earth not? Because they would be the spokespeople in Massachusetts with the strongest voice for preservation, I would think, as would Historic New England and Preservation Massachusetts. You know, those are kind of the three leading entities that are not just regional but statewide that I would expect to hear from, or expect the state to hear from when something like this comes up. But I don't know. And any of us can ask those questions of those same entities, or I'm sure they're on alert to some degree, but I don't know what that means. I'm not sure we need to even have a vote on this unless you would like to. I wanted to be sure we had a chance to discuss it, and I'm more than happy to follow your lead as a group, as a commission, and you know.
So we should, I agree that we shouldn't make a decision this minute, because we haven't all probably looked at it long enough or well enough.
Yeah, it's a pretty deep
But
thing.
do we then send our thoughts to Erica to keep?
My impression was you should send them directly by email personally,
Yeah.
rather than
Given
going through the town. I would do it
short
individually.
timeline, we
Yeah, that's
wouldn't
the
be
reason,
able to come up with a comment from
Okay,
the commission as a whole or an agreed comment, because more homework needs to be done on this before their timeline is up to submit that comment for public testimony.
okay.
Yeah.
So I would encourage everyone to do their homework. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or Corey. We'll do our best to answer whatever we can. Obviously, this is somewhat of a matter of, you know, how it is written. And that can be cumbersome in, you know, picking out the fine details. So
One of the things
we'll help you with
Yeah, no,
everything
that
that we can. I pointed out some of the major things that I saw to Bob, but otherwise we can try to help you formulate something if you'd like. But I would encourage everyone to do a little bit of homework on this, and to, like Bob said, maybe reach out to MHC or such. If Bob's planning to reach out, if he wants to share what he's learned from
I'll
them with
certainly
me,
share,
I
but-
will go ahead and send it to the commission as a whole. And then I do encourage you to, if you feel strongly in either way of the bill, to send your comment in.
There you go. it occurs to me that Councilor Lutke may be very interested to know about this if she doesn't already, because of her energy and interest in having a local historic district potentially in Hyannisport. I mean, this would tend, if passed, I think, my opinion is it would diffuse the reasons for that in many ways. If you had a local historic district committee for Hyannisport after the passage of this bill, I think it wouldn't be very different from this historical commission. And if that's the case, you know, it's not worth all the spinning of wheels and time and energy. And there may be other solutions to help Hyannisport, which were discussed and offered by Commissioner Powell at our last meeting, for example, you know, involving some of the civic groups and self-policing, and it's the wrong term, but self-governing, self-guidance, if possible. Okay. All right, I'm happy to leave it that way, that we'll each pursue it individually, and if we, upon reading it more carefully, feel motivated to send a comment individually, we will. Send it as an individual. I wouldn't sign it as a member of the Historical Commission particularly. Maybe I'm mistaken in saying that, but I'm not planning to do that. I just put my name and address in it. Yeah. Otherwise, we're kind of putting the town on the spot with this thing, and it may be that the town would like to be, we don't really have time to organize that.
So you're addressing it as a concerned citizen?
Yes, basically, yeah. Yeah, I believe so. If we'd had 5 or 6 weeks to have an act together, maybe we'd have more time to think through the ramifications of a unified position, whatever it would be, and it would then have more detail to it, but I don't think there's time to get organized around that.
It would be nice if they had explained why they feel it was important to make a change. What's the benefit to kind of help you decide,
Oh, I
I
agree.
can agree with that or I can't agree with that?
So I have a hunch that if we went to the state website, there would probably be a record of the testimony that was already submitted on behalf of the bill being submitted to the joint committee. No, not the joint committee, it is a joint committee.
It is at the joint
yeah.
committee at the moment. That's where the bill
okay.
is at the moment.
And, you know, you might at least hear from the partisans in favor of it. You might hear from partisans not in favor of it. I don't really know. This is new enough to me that I haven't had time to really stick my nose in the tent far enough on that to know, but past history suggests to me that that kind of thing should be possible, and it would be a public record. Yeah, I don't know, I don't really know quite what else to say there.
Bill, it's 1428. I'm just bringing up the state website so that
Oh,
you can
that's
see
great.
where it's at.
Thank
And
you.
we'll be following along with this too, obviously, so where it goes and, no, it was not 1428. What is it? 14, do you know? It's on there.
I have it says
Bill State
1428 in here, and then
yeah.
House Bill 4331.
Yeah, and that comes up with the enact relative to historic. There we go.
Okay, good, thank you for doing that. So
Yeah.
the fact that this is recorded and is available for the public after this meeting is potentially helpful
So-
for other people to warm up to this and understand it a little bit also. And I was just thinking, one thing I did not have time to do was to literally print out or put chapter 40C as it is right now on one screen and their amended version on the next, and then go section by section by section and see, thank you, Charlie, section by section of men of our modern times here, to
I did
You know, to see
download the
the
bill if
comparison.
you want me to send you a PDF.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I'll send you a
so
PDF.
that's what she has shared with us, so
Great.
that's great. But again, you know, downloading the existing 40C and making the comparison instead of just shooting blind with the new version, which is all I've done so far. I was working from memory, and that's not a safe thing at my age.
Do we know if this presenter, what district is she in? Where is she located in Massachusetts?
I believe she is district.
It's Western Mass 413.
Hampshire, Franklin, and Worcester.
But it's a bill with statewide ramifications, of course, which was part of why it rang a bell about what Senator Sear was proposing off and on over a period of years to modify historic districts' approaches statewide to solar and modern energy conservation efforts and essentially would have discarded any historic preservation control over that, which is sort of an all black or white, no compromise, middle ground kind of a thing. And ultimately, as I understand it, that was withdrawn, and partly because Old Kings Highway accommodated some of the concerns in a good way. And I don't need to go into the details of that, but you would always hope for that kind of thing to be a result. And if we live in a day and age where people have to scare one another to death before they can talk seriously about something that makes sense, what a shame, but it does feel that way at times, and this could be part of that too. I just don't know. No clue.
I was just moving back, but yeah, right now it's been referred to the Committee on Municipalities and Regional Government. That's where it stands. And they held the hearing, which was just an introduction of the bill, on June 10th, 2025.
So they haven't taken any testimony yet, by the sound
As
of
far as
that?
I'm aware, no.
Okay, well,
I could be wrong on that, but as far as I am aware.
Okay,
Does the session close on July 1st? The legislative session? I mean, is that gonna push it out a little bit, give us a little cushion?
I do not know. I can reach out to the state and ask.
Yeah.
That way I can try to follow up with you and let you know.
do we have a state rep or a state senator with an office here in the town hall building anymore? Charlie, do you know? We used to years ago, a lot of years ago, quite honestly, so
Yeah.
I'm a little dated in my question. That used to be.
Kip Diggs, I don't think he meets here.
No, maybe not. Well, so Kip and Steve are our reps and Julian is our
Yes,
senator.
yeah. Steve meets at the adult center at the last Friday of every month
Okay.
in the morning.
Well, both of them are very receptive to questions. It's not an issue at all. I mean, and they're easy people to reach out to and not a concern. It's not a big exposure to do that. So that's an alternative too. Or you can, if you want, on our behalf, that would be great.
Yeah, I can find out where they're
We're
meeting.
just looking for a little bit more information about this if we
Yeah.
can. I think that would be great.
Yeah, I'll make a note of the legislative timing, and then I will also see about where Kip and Steve meet in
Thank you.
times.
Great. Looking at our agenda then, I would sort of suggest we move on to which is really briefly the correspondence that we received back on section 106. We received a response from the applicants or their representatives, and personally, I thought it addressed our concern and seems to satisfy me. They have a grasp of the structural integrity, strength, what have you, of the steeple, and they're not going to do something that's going to cause the entire building to collapse. But in what they presented to us to begin with, that was not 100% evident. It seemed like they kind of got the cart before the horse, so I'm glad we asked the question, and I think it's good we got our answer. But is everybody comfortable with that?
Agreed, yes.
Okay, good.
Don't worry about it.
I'm sorry?
Don't
You
worry
worry
about
about
it.
Well, fair enough.
This has been an ongoing battle in Centerville.
Yes, it has. It's
It's
clear.
been very contentious, it's been very emotional,
Absolutely.
and I feel that they're trying to drag us into it by saying, if we say it's okay, hey, the Historic Commission doesn't have a problem with it. What's your problem?
That's always a risk.
And
I thought of
feel
that before.
That
too.
first drawing showed two little wings coming out of the church steeple, okay? So I would say to them, if you're going to change the appearance of the church in any way, we are obligated to have a hearing
Mhm.
and notify the abutters. Okay? If they're not changing it, if the steeple remains visually completely unchanged,
Mhm.
we have no jurisdiction. We
So
can't do
there's a
anything.
finer point even, I appreciate your comment, there's a finer point inherent in what you're asking or saying too, and that is if they're adding something that will be a visual change versus if they're doing a partial demolition, which is a subtraction of some historic elements to the building, are sometimes wonderfully and sometimes very unfortunately two different things. And our jurisdiction is more about the destruction or demolition of parts than the addition of something, although sometimes they are one and the same, and we know that's from many proposals that we see. I'm not quite sure how to read that situation in this case. Jack, any thoughts? I mean, you're my architect go-to on a question like that.
Well,
And we didn't think of it that way when we met before. It doesn't mean we can't still, by any means, and you're
I
right,
just
we're right to bring it up.
Had a chance to
That.
think about it.
Yeah.
And to learn a little more about
Yeah,
it.
it has been contentious. So my understanding from the response and from a more careful reading of the original statements that were brought to us at our last meeting is that cell service equipment already is in the steeple. This is replacing it with more modern equipment. So to some degree, the very contentious battle there was a number of years ago about whether or not to have the equipment in that building somehow or other has already been somewhat settled. This is an enhancement to the equipment or something of that. I don't know that I'm 1,000% right, but I believe I am.
was that original installation, did the installers have to pay the church a fee to occupy the space?
I don't know that for an absolute fact, but I would assume and believe so.
Usually the church gets money for doing it.
Yeah, I remember reading at the time that it was supported by members of the church as a financial revenue enhancing opportunity for the church for its maintenance budget. And that's a very common tool in historic preservation with institutional buildings like that that can physically accommodate something of this sort. And especially nowadays with 5G, they're needing shorter range, nearer and more abundant towers. It puts a little more pressure on communities to find locations, and maybe it's an opportunity for more churches and towers and things to be there, but without being visible.
We had that come up at one of the churches in West Barnstable.
Okay.
It was voted down in the end, but I imagine the engineering now is very different than what it was then. People were worried about health back then.
The weight.
Oh, and they were. That was the main concern for Centerville to
It
begin
was the
with.
weight. In fact, right now, they're restoring the tabernacle steeple in Craigville Village
Huh?
Mm-hmm.
because of the deadlock possibility. They're talking about Wi-Fi,
Okay.
maybe having Wi-Fi on the green and that kind of thing. And
Well, it's a
they're gonna hold the weight.
There's some comparables between the two, one being the weight load in the tower, but also potential for change of image.
Well, the result at Craigville is that the engineer that they hired said, if you don't do something with that steeple the way it is, it's gonna fall through the church. So now we just reinforcing this.
Right. I didn't bring my notes with me from our last meeting, but I remember that I had found in my research before last meeting at least one town in Massachusetts, and I think it was Ipswich, where there had been a church tower struck by lightning and therefore lost for a number of years to the church. And they were approached with an opportunity for a new purpose-built steeple that would be built to house the equipment, so it would carry the load and also give them their steeple back. And it was a win-win for everybody, with the exception of the health issues, which is not our purview. And I appreciate people are concerned with that, I totally do, but that's not something that we can get into. What I would hope is that even if they did say, well, the historical commission said it was okay, or didn't say it wasn't okay, is that people would understand that we don't rule on matters of people's health or popular sentiment in the village, unfortunately. We can get stuck in a hot spot from time to time. It's part of the job,
And you'll
unfortunately.
phrase it, or Erica will phrase it, that as far as the structure, a historical element of the building, that's our.
That's been our concern from the beginning. Well, I think our communication in the 106 response was that and
This
covered
was
that.
the plans. It's hard to see from here, but I'm gonna try to zoom in a little bit. Where are they?
Yeah, it's a pretty primitive plan they've supplied for this purpose. It's very hard
Yeah.
to.
The gray is actually the exterior.
Mhm.
That's the exterior.
Yeah.
Area. So this in here is all antenna work. That's interior.
Right.
So aesthetically, from the exterior, from what I can see and what everyone sees, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see any changes to the exterior.
That was what I thought initially,
Okay.
and I thought that was the original, I assumed that was the original intent based on that plan, but
So if there's no change, there's nothing we can say.
I think that's correct, John.
But I do
It's
think
a
it's
good thing to
important
raise.
that the concerned citizens of Centerville understand that.
Yeah,
Because as we've seen in Hyannisport, there are people who think that we can do things that we cannot.
it's well said,
And,
right?
and this is a hornet's nest.
Oh, I know that. Oh, I absolutely know that. I was asked to sign a petition 10 years ago about that, which I cheerfully didn't find in my email until after it was too late. And I didn't want to take a position on it because I could see so many different sides of it, and it's a hornet's nest. It doesn't belong to me. I don't live in Centerville. I don't feel like I have an opinion that would be fair.
So that's all I have to say.
No, I appreciate it. Are you comfortable with us just kind of resting our oars on it for now? I'm not quite sure what action we would.
Well, what is expected? Are we supposed to answer their?
No, we've already
Correspondence?
responded, basically, and they have written back to us with their response to our question, which was
Structural.
structural. That was the way we phrased it at that time. And I think the time has run out for questions under 106, under the initial premise, at least, in order to do that. So we should have,
Well, I'm not saying ask
I
questions.
wish we
I'm
had
just,
thought of, making that sort of a statement or asking that question back then. I think, my opinion is that ship has sailed, but I don't wanna make that be just because Bob said that, that's what happens. That's not my game plan here at all.
Okay.
Okay.
I have to go soon, so can we do the
Yeah,
upcoming historic events?
I'm sure.
I just have two at the moment. One is this Saturday, which is the 21st, from 3 to 5 in the afternoon, Barnstable Historical Society is having their opening day, and they have a jazz band out in the garden, so it's gonna be there with food and so on. It's a New Orleans band. I happen to know the people in the band.
Yeah, right.
But
Shocking.
you can or not, 3 to 5 this Saturday. And then 6 days later, on Friday, at the 1717 Meeting House. Did I mention this at the last meeting? I don't know if I did, but Jenkins family is very well known in West Barnstable. Elizabeth Jenkins is the person who is always considered the mother of our meeting house, because starting in the 20s into the 50s, she had the building brought back to just about its original form. And her parents, Ruth and James Jenkins, he was a sea captain, traveled around the world many times. And this woman who's going to be speaking on, again, that's Friday, the 27th, her husband is a Jenkins, and they found these big 2 tubs of letters. And between the 2 people, it's incredible. This lady had me do some of the editing for her. And I felt like I was time traveling, because it's a two volume historic novel, but you have to say novel because she doesn't know every single thing that these people did or thought, but boy, darn close because of all these letters. And you really do feel like you time travel. I don't know how else to say it. It's really wonderful. So I'm looking forward to going to that.
That's great. I
Love to
don't
see
think
all
you did
there.
tell us about that last time. We were running
I
around.
did?
I don't
I
think
did.
you did. No, I
Okay,
think we were
something-
running pretty short on time last
Is
time.
that something you buy tickets to from the historical website, or how do you?
The other one, the garden on the 21st, I think they're asking for donations. And this one's asking for donations too, but
Jenkins, yeah, but
yeah, no.
is that through the historical
So, you can
society, or is
just-
it through its own thing,
The Meeting House one?
the meeting house?
Yeah,
one?
we have West Parish, the church, and then we have 1717 Meeting House Foundation, and that's what this is.
So through that.
Great.
Okay, sorry, I have to.
Anybody else have any? Thank you, Nancy, very much. Anybody have any historical events around hustings of Barnstable to report? All right. If not, I would like to move on to the Katuitt Form Bs that we had sent out by Erica. Thank you very much, Erica. I looked at all of them. We talked, she and I, about a couple of them where I had questions because once again, there were some manuscript notes in them. And that always makes me a little nervous when we're submitting things to the State Historic Commission, and yet they have a history of accepting them. And Erica reaffirmed that she had already anticipated that I would have that question about some of them, and she had looked carefully at them and found that the manuscript notes are correct, which is important. So if anyone were to look at one and say, gee, I wonder, they would find also that they're correct, and off it goes to be filed. So my impression is that we should go ahead and approve the bunch of them as a batch. Unless any of you had any hesitations, and that's perfectly fine if you did. I welcome the comments if you had them. Would someone like to make a motion that we approve the transmittal of those to MHC?
So moved.
And a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Andrew. All in favor of doing so?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. That's unanimous. And let's see. We also have an approval of minutes for May 20th, which was our last meeting. Did everybody get a chance to have a look at those? And I didn't see anything that I thought was incorrect or problematic. No? All good? All righty. So could we have a motion to approve the minutes for May 20th?
Again, so moved.
Thank you. Second?
Seconded.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed. What did I forget? I always forget something.
Yep, there's a reminder of the election of officers next month.
That's good. You're supposed to remind us. I like that.
Just as a reminder, we do not have a clerk at the moment, so if anyone's interested in the clerk position, please think about it.
Yeah, as a reminder, some of you will remember this, the conversation about clerk came up when we lost Marilyn Fifield last year, who had been an exemplary clerk. It was kind of her thing. She was just so very good at doing that, and she enjoyed doing it, is how she made her contribution all the more significant. And we missed her. We decided, most of us at that time were sort of too intimidated at the prospect to take it up. Some of us were plenty busy already, which is fine. And we decided we could sort of group clerk. And I think legally and technically we can do that. From your point of view as staff, has that been okay? Has that worked all
Yeah,
right?
that has been fine, so if no one wants to take up the position by
Right.
themselves as clerk, I
So-
can totally understand.
Well, let's use this as an
Grouping
occasion
as
to
group.
put us as a group on notice. We should be thinking about it between now and next time. And if any of you would like to do it, it's not an onerous job. It just means that on the clerk falls the responsibility when Erica sends out the minutes. And you would send them specifically to the clerk in that case, I would assume, as a pre-read, or how does that work?
I typically, what I had done with Marilyn is I would send her the minutes about a week before I send out the agenda.
Yeah.
And she would send me her initial edits, and then
Yeah.
I'd post it to the agenda for the group to
So the
look at
edited
and still
version
read,
was the
yeah.
one that would be approved. That's fine.
Yes.
So that gives you an idea of what the clerk would do, as opposed to now we're reading them, and if one of us sees something in time, we will flag it and it will show up in what we approve, and if not, we can amend the minutes on, at the meeting too, but that's a little more complex for her. So that's what we would think about for next time. Does anybody have any new business that we didn't anticipate? Anything at all? Counselor Bloom, have you anything you would like to comment upon or add, or you're welcome to chime in any old time, you know that, I know you know that. Alrighty, I would entertain a motion to adjourn in that case.
So moved.
Second,
Seconded.
all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye, I don't think anybody's opposed. Has anybody ever opposed adjournment? Has anybody ever opposed adjournment at the town council? I don't know that either. That would be more understanding.
Nights at,
11:30 at night or something, right? That would be a more believable scenario.
I'm always recruiting for the Hyannis Historical Society.
That's funny.